Welcome. We are a body like Bruce, and we have been rereading this particular book, Bruce Lee Conversations, The Life and Legacy of a Legend by Fiaz Rafiq, with a foreword by Diana Lee Innocento, Dan Innocento's daughter, the goddaughter of Bruce Lee, apparently. Bruce Lee belongs among the top echelon of influential stars and iconic figures in the world. More than 35 years after his death, he remains a perennial bestseller in video stores, comic book shops, on t-shirts and posters. He has influenced pop culture more than anyone before or since. Lee was named among Time magazine's 100 most influential people of the 20th century. He has achieved the iconic status of a cultural legend and has had a greater impact on more people worldwide than Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, and James Dean combined. In this unique and intriguing landmark book, you will discover a compilation of exclusive interviews with Bruce Lee's original students, close friends, co-stars and colleagues. Those who knew him best give their candid views on the great martial arts master and action movie star adored by millions around the globe. Their memories and stories capture him in a way no straightforward narrative ever could. Furthermore, for the first time ever, you will discover exclusive interviews with some of the best professional boxers, bodybuilders, UFC fighters, and personalities from the motion picture industry, paying homage to the legend who continues to have an indelible impact on athletes and people from all walks of life. To your delight, you will be treated, can't you see it, to over 50 compelling and thought-provoking interviews. Fighter, film star, philosopher, teacher, fitness aficionado, Bruce Lee continues to reach us even though his light was extinguished over 3.5 decades ago. This is a unique and fresh insight into a man whose mysterious life proved one of the most startling enigmas of the century. Bruce Lee Conversations is the ultimate tribute to the man whose legacy continues to grow worldwide. We'll just see if there's anything on the back jacket. Might be about the author. Okay, yes it is. Fiaz Rafiq is a leading columnist for the best-selling martial arts magazine Martial Arts Illustrated and a major contributor to Impact, the global action movie magazine. He is also the author of Ultimate Conversations. His work as a journalist has appeared in magazines in the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France and Australia. He has also written for major mainstream magazine, Men's Fitness, and has contributed to the Sun's UFC coverage. I think it might be the UK newspaper. As a passionate Bruce Lee historian, he has worked on numerous projects promoting the life and legacy of the legendary icon and contributed to the official new Bruce Lee documentary, How Bruce Lee Changed the World. Rafiq is the founder and director of H&L Media Group and publisher of H&L Publishing, a company dedicated to publishing sports-related books for the international market. H&L has attracted elite names in the genre the company specializes in, with various books receiving mainstream media coverage as well as making the New York Times bestseller list. He was one of the co-executive producers of Sensei, the movie directed by Bruce Lee's goddaughter, Diana Lee Innocento. A publisher, author and columnist, Fiaz Rafiq continues to work on new projects. Okay, so that's about the author. Now we're going to look into the book. Dedication. The book is dedicated to the one and only Bruce Lee, who continues to inspire people from all walks of life. Secondly, the author would have wanted to dedicate this book to John Little, who did more than anyone to propagate the life and philosophy of Bruce Lee and open the eyes of many people by promoting the late legend as a multifaceted individual. Acknowledgements. Contents page. All these different people that knew Bruce Lee, the students, etc., and other friends, co-stars and colleagues. His movie sets. The legacy. And these are all the modern bodybuilders, sportsmen, boxers, etc. of late and of pretty much present. Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Roaring Grace, etc. Forward. When Fiaz first approached me, it's Diana and Vicente, about writing a foreword about a man she grew up calling Uncle Bruce, an honorary relative in the family that she was named after at birth, Diana Lee. She wasn't sure what to expect. This man she only knew through the eyes of a small child. In her youth, she was oblivious to the fact that Uncle Bruce was becoming a famous star, had numerous martial arts students and associates, travelled around the world, and was passionate about philosophy. She did know that he and Linda had his ex-wife, had the coolest kids to play with, Brandon and Shannon, the bliss of youth. Then life took a different direction in her family. What became apparent to her at the tender age of 7 was that Uncle Bruce was an important figure in her father's, Dan and Santo's, life, and that upon his death he would forever change the course of his father's future. What little did she know that how Uncle Bruce would also change the lives of millions of people around the world. That's what Fiaz Rafiq's book gives us, the reader, an insight to the chronological train ride into the life journey of a very special man, and how the world's journey continues without him, but his spirit is ever so present. Through Bruce Lee conversations, we witness the memories of this intelligent, persuasive, muscular, small-framed man with a great Chinese accent, she adds, who created a vision for the future that would change modern martial arts history. We learn how this man broke down the barriers of racism, kicked his way through the walls of Hollywood discrimination, and bridged the worlds of East meets West. Even today, his influence, popularity, and fan base still continues to grow. After reading the diverse collection of interviews that Fiaz managed to put together, no small feat, she had to say she was absorbed. There were people she heard about as her father raised her. There were people that she personally knew growing up, but didn't completely have all the dots connected to the relationship with Uncle Bruce. There were people she read about and even worked with in the entertainment industry. And then there were the tremendous athletes she has admired from afar, but had no idea how a man she called Uncle Bruce would leave his inspirational fingerprints on the minds, bodies, and souls of so many people. Some of the people highlighted may be controversial, some may be from unrelated fields, yet there is a common thread that flows through the fabric of what these people share together about one of the world's most influential icons, and they call him Bruce Lee. Diana Lee in the centre. Preface. Okay, we've already sort of covered this in the inside jacket. Basically talking about how Bruce Lee was a top echelon of influential stars and iconic figures in the world. More than 35 years after his death, he remains in perennial bestsellers in video stores, comic book shops, on t-shirts and posters, etc, etc. It's quite lengthy. Bruce Lee's legacy lives on, and he continues to reach us even though his light was extinguished more than 35 years ago. This is a fresh insight into it, his life. Chapter 1 is original students. During his lifetime, Bruce Lee taught very few people, mostly in small groups and on a private basis. He started teaching martial arts shortly after his arrival in the United States in 1959. He taught a modified version of the Wing Chun system, which he later named Jun Fan Kung Fu. Initially, he taught some friends in Seattle and later opened his first branch of the Jun Fan Kung Fu Institute. Although when he later moved to California, his mantra of efficiency would lead him to form his own personal style, with the focus on the most expedient solutions to any possible encounters. The Seattle period is an integral part of Lee's time in the United States. Some of the more prominent original students of Bruce Lee from that era include Jesse Glover, Taki Kimura, James DeMille, Patrick Strong, Doug Palmer, Skip Ellsworth, Leroy Garcia, and Joe Kells, to name but a few. According to DeMille, Lee surrounded himself with street fighters. Most of his inner circle students had some street fighting experience. While studying philosophy at the University of Washington, he also worked at Ruby Chow's restaurant to support himself. Apparently she was a friend of the family. Lee's style was ever evolving, but its foundation took place here in Seattle. Jesse Glover was his first student and became a very close friend. Taki Kimura, his closest friend and his assistant instructor, was his confidant towards the end, when Lee finally got the fame and craved and became the biggest box office draw in Asia. In 1964, Bruce moved to Oakland, California, and opened up his second branch of the Jordan Fan Kung Fu Institute. This period, commonly known as the Oakland years, had a substantial impact on Bruce's evolution as a creative martial artist. This was a period when noticeable changes could be seen in his approach to and development of his art and his training methods. He changed his focus from being a follower to being a creator, a thinking martial artist in pursuit of finding the truth in martial arts, and so forth. Lee's core group of students were more than mere passing acquaintances. They were close friends. His ideals, his philosophy, and his insight remained fresh and alive in the minds of his personal students, most who have passed, the celebrity ones. In the following exclusive interviews, some of the most prominent personal students of the master from all three periods ruminate on their relationship with the greatest martial arts exponent of the century, Bruce Lee. Here's Jesse Glover. So Bruce Lee really didn't care who you were, what colour you were. Okay, this guy is obviously an American Negro. Okay, he gets asked a few questions here. Question: Jesse, you were the first person in the United States to be accepted as Bruce Lee's student. Can you recall how and when you first met Bruce? And he goes on about how he met him. How would you describe his personality? Jesse Glover: he was like this. If he liked you, he liked you, and if he didn't like you, he just wouldn't talk to you. He liked to joke around. Even Ed Hart, who was his second student, they both had a sense of humour. They told a lot of jokes. He was a fun guy to be around. Like he says, if he liked you, he liked you. He liked to go to the movies. Jerry Lewis was his favourite actor. Funny guy. From those older movies. He liked to dance and draw. During the intermission, they would practice a little. During the movie, he would be engrossed in the movie. Okay. Did he have a temper, or was he a calm person? Calm person. Jesse Glover: well, he was both. If you made him mad, he'd get mad. But when Jesse knew him and the people that were there, most of them really liked Bruce. Even the guys who didn't care about Kung Fu liked Bruce as a personality. Were there any specific rudimentary guidelines which the students had to follow when he taught? Jesse Glover: when he met Bruce Lee, he was pretty open. Later on, he became more and more traditional, so a lot of guys dropped out. It became more and more a traditional Chinese Kung Fu class. Bruce studied philosophy. Just how much was he engrossed in philosophy when he was residing in Seattle? Can you elaborate on Bruce's philosophical goals? Jesse Glover: he studied philosophy and related to the martial arts. He practiced all the time and got pretty philosophical about it. He was interested in philosophy, Chinese philosophy mostly. He liked to talk about it. There was a guy named John Jackson who had studied Asian philosophy who was much better steeped in it than Bruce. Bruce would misquote people sometimes, and John would correct it. I guess he thought about philosophies. His thoughts about philosophy were all tied up with his Kung Fu. He thought somewhere in the philosophy he was going to find the keys to Kung Fu. And he loved to say certain things. He loved words, so he would play with words and stuff like that. Most of the guys who were in the first group were pretty intelligent and well read. They weren't all that concerned about what Bruce said about philosophy unless he talked about fighting. When he started talking about fighting, Jesse's ears were wide open. Now all this stuff, such as his quotes and sayings later on, Jesse found that a lot of it came from Wang Shun Yong, or Lung, who was his primary teacher. So forth. And what Jesse Glover did before he met Bruce Lee. He's like a boxer and into judo. Did you ever witness Bruce Lee in an actual incident? Jesse Glover: we were doing a demonstration at a school and a guy in the audience had a problem. Bruce said Kung Fu is a soft style and Karate is a hard style. he challenged Bruce. Bruce asked us if we should do something about the challenge. If he should do something about the challenge, but we told him to forget it, and this was the time. The guy was a judo player, but also a black belt of karate. Jesse used to play judo against the guy, and he could throw him, but he had a hard time throwing Jesse. He saw Bruce doing a demonstration of another style and thought that's how Bruce would fight. So he kept challenging him until one day he sent the stupid guy over and issued a challenge. Bruce and Jesse were at school, and he came out of the door. He told him to go tell the guys to meet him on the 3rd floor. He told him, we can't fight here in the school, so he said at the Y Club. So the fight was set up. They got off the bus and went to the Y. The guy put on a ski. Bruce took off his shirt. Jesse was the referee, and Ed was the timer, Ed Hart. The fight was supposed to stop after 3 rounds. The guy got in a cat stance. The guy threw a kick. Bruce blocked the kick, got the guy on the floor, bounced him off the wall and kept hitting him and chased him. Jesse hollered stop. The fight lasted 11 seconds. But because this guy got knocked out or whatever further on, I think Ed Hart was saying Bruce knocked him out, and then the guy came to, and he says, oh, how long was I out? And he says, oh, 65 seconds. And not to hurt the guy's feelings, right? It's very interesting stuff. Asked, can you recall any funny incidents taking place during a close friendship with Bruce? Jesse Glover. Well, the funny incident was where he couldn't hit him. Laughs. And it's James DeMille. This guy was a rough and hard street fighter. You know? And he comes across Bruce Lee for his energy, jumping around as a young kid. Well, probably 20 or so. Okay, and he has a go with him. I thought, oh, yeah, I could beat this guy. You know, who's this little punk sort of thing. Okay, he asked this James DeMille if he had any questions. James quickly told him that here in America fighting was not a game, that all his fancy moves would not work against a fast street fighter. His smile vanished and he moved in front of DeMille and asked if he would take a punch at him, at Bruce Lee. For a moment, DeMille was speechless. He couldn't believe he was serious. He was 5'7", about 135 pounds. James was about 5'10", 225 pounds, but he suddenly realised he was serious and everyone was looking at him for a response. Feeling totally confident, he said okay and dropped back into a loose boxer stance. He stood there relaxed with both arms hanging by his side. This was Bruce Lee. So James DeMille thought he would tap him lightly on the forehead with his jab, which should impress him with his speed and control. He fired a quick jab with his left. The next few moments were his first steps to learning humility. In a blink, the kid, or Bruce Lee, exploded into action, not only blocking his punch, but yanked his body towards the floor, engaging his right arm and interlocking it with his left, so it felt like a pretzel. It was an odd feeling. He could not move. He had trapped both his arms and grounded him so he could not kick or even take a step. He smiled, tapped him on the forehead as if to ask, is anyone home? And then he released his pressure and stepped back. This was James DeMille's introduction to Bruce Lee. He immediately joined a small group he was training with. On James DeMille, he's asked the question, you are an undefeated heavyweight boxer. There is a world of difference between applying movements with an obedient partner who cooperates and an actual opponent who is bent on destroying you with full contact blows. Did you not find Bruce's style to be inferior to a full contact fighting form such as boxing? James DeMille, he boxed in the Air Force and Bruce boxed in high school. He was very good as a natural boxer with no training. Yet oddly enough, when it came down to what to keep and what to remove from boxing, Bruce said throw it all out. After thinking about it, it made sense. Springy footwork, jabbing, combinations, bobbing and weaving, and even slipping were all inefficient when it came down to Bruce Lee's rules of simplicity, efficiency and practicality. All boxing principles were in conflict with the solid stability of the closed by John footwork, the constant defensive potential of both arms at the same time, when using the centerline concept and the awesome power of the power line concept for use of energy in trapping and striking. Once James understood his meaning, Bruce's meaning, he threw out all of his boxing knowledge and he hasn't regretted it for a moment. Also, he was a natural athlete and was good at any sport he explored many styles of fighting, yet remained loyal to certain underlying principles from Wing Chun. He felt that although the overall Wing Chun principles needed to be changed, the root of the principle was still valid. His movements and applied chi sao and trapping became more refined and efficient, yet you could see a strong Wing Chun influence. Bruce Lee's contribution to humankind far exceeds the simple confines of the martial arts world. Was Bruce Lee a philosopher or a warrior? James DeMille. He believed that Bruce's early years were focused on the physical rather than on the philosophical. He quoted many philosophers, but James DeMille thought it was for the effect it had on us, or all of them, rather than some interest in philosophy. He was amused at how Americans were so impressed with profound statements, even when no one understood what the statement meant. Bruce was young and had dreams of becoming famous. He also realized that in order to achieve his goal of becoming an actor, director and producer, he must be unique and different from any other Chinese kid. He had no skills other than martial arts, so he decided to commit 100% of his energy to becoming the best. This would be his pathway to stardom. James DeMille thought he became more serious about the philosophical side as he got older and saw the need to balance out his image as a martial artist. Okay. Apparently he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, all this other sort of stuff. James DeMille Part 2. Question: Bruce Lee never entered competitions. Can you elaborate on this? James DeMille. Well, the first thing and reason is that he felt if at any time you have rules, it automatically limited what you could do. In other words, the person fighting you knew something, therefore it wasn't like a street fight where you quickly as possible have to hurt the person and get over with. Bruce never entered tournaments with rules versus street fighting, which is survival, and he was only interested in survival. He wasn't interested in competition because he felt that it didn't prove anything. He said that any time you play by rules, it automatically restricts you and what you can do. He didn't like that. Remember, this was back in the 60s when there weren't many tournaments going on, and they had mainly judo tournaments and a few karate tournaments. Bruce couldn't relate to those because they were just sport, so it wasn't like he was relating to martial arts as we think of it today. It's really different if you look back at the 60s, because there were only judo and karate tournaments. You could enter as far as how good you were, so it wasn't like MMA. Okay, he had a great interest in all the boxers like Muhammad Ali, Floyd Patterson, Jack Dempsey. In the Los Angeles era of karate, champions worked out with Bruce. One of them has gone on to say Bruce never really sparred. What is your opinion on this? James DeMille. They didn't spar with Bruce, but played around. You know how people go out and play around, sparring if you were serious. Again, Bruce would take you out if he thought you were a threat. You have to remember, back in those days, people like Bob Wall and Chuck Norris were champions of non-contact karate. Now that's a big difference, because that was even before Joe Louis got into full contact. So most of those guys, what they did was non-contact or very light contact, so you can't even compare that with the likes of today's type of full contact sparring. So when we hear about Joe Louis sparring, Chuck Norris sparring, it was just playing. There was no sparring. It was like he'd show him and he shows me what we could do, and then that's all. It was never of anything of any intensity or seriousness, because they couldn't compete against Bruce. They weren't in his league at all. They'd be too used to rules, whereas he didn't have those rules. It was very serious. straight out street fighting, one-on-one survival. And Jason had fought out with Bruce Lee. People really don't realise Bruce was a scientist as far as martial arts goes. He didn't even know. When James Will looked back at all the things he did, it was like going back to a science program about speed, power, trapping, closing, spring, energy, and all these things. It was beautiful the way he thought about them and structured them as far as being able to use them in the street. To James Will, that was the most important thing. Not that Bruce Lee was top or Bruce Lee was good. It was the things he gave James, which he gave his students, or which James Mill gave his students, and how to think, how to be able to look out there and see what techniques are out there, and how do you modify them or develop them for yourself. And that was where the real value was from Bruce's teachings. To James Mill, it was the conceptualization and being creative in your own mind and how to do it. So be creative in your own mind and figure out how to do it. Whatever that is. Okay, Patrick Strong. Here's some interesting information here. Patrick Strong is a rare original student of Bruce Lee from the early period. His unique teaching approach, backed up with an intellectual insight in what he is teaching, is refreshing. Pat is one of the most down-to-earth instructors one can ever hope to meet, and a true gentleman. Before meeting Bruce and signing up at the Seattle Chun Fan Kung Fu Institute, Mr. Strong had a boxing background. He continues to teach in his garage privately. Question: you have gone on record to explain just how quick Bruce was. Can you expand on that? Pat Strong. What made Bruce fast was his start speed. What Pat means by that is you see a lot of martial artists who appear to be fast, but what makes somebody really fast is how fast they start the movement. Bruce's big thing was his start speed, and the start speed starts instantly. There's no way to react to that. So when somebody hits fast, they have to contract their muscles to control the punch, and the speed is an instant. The speed has to follow the contraction of the muscle. What Bruce would do is that he would release his energy in a way that his muscles. He would release his energy in a way that his muscles didn't contract. Consequently, the speed was instant. It was like a firecracker going off. He was more like an explosion. Here's something you may realise, pick up on, and utilise. Pat Strong was asked, can you disclose to this author some of the speed drills Bruce utilised to increase this attribute? Pat Strong, the thing about Bruce which made him different from anybody else is that he tied philosophy into his martial arts. His main philosophical sources were Zen and Taoism, and from the Tao you have two very powerful principles. One is the principle of Wu Wei, meaning the not doing or letting it happen. The other principle was the Wei Wu Wei, meaning the effortless doing with the soft and invisible powers. He felt that these two principles were the very height of the martial arts, the highest level to attain. So the not doing, let it happen, the Wu Wei name he called it, was the non-intentional. He said in order to be fast you have to strike with non-intention. That means you strike without the aid of the consciousness itself. In his Tao of Jeet Kune Do he says the consciousness itself is the greatest hindrance to all physical action. Bruce believed if at any time the conscious mind got involved in throwing a punch, it now became an effort which starts from the mind and signals to the body, to the muscles, to contract to throw the punch. Bruce believed in non-intention over the intention of throwing a punch. The non-intention would be to strike without the direct intention of striking. This sounds complicated, but it's the simplest thing in the world. So he used analogies to explain it. One of the analogies was bamboo. If you go to a bamboo in a forest, you have to be careful. If you push bamboo and let it go, it'll snap back and hit you. Bamboo doesn't have to think. doesn't have to stop and think or prepare to hit. It just hits. He was talking about physics. That would be the elastic potential energy, wouldn't it? You grab the bamboo and release it and it snaps. So plain. So plain. He also spoke about a set of keys on the edge of a table. When the table is jerked or moved, the keys fall. They don't stop and think of falling. They just fall. What the keys and the bamboo have in common is that neither one has brains. They just act on physical forces. In physics, when you speak of energy, you have potential energy. When you think of potential energy, you have basically the elastic potential energy, which would be the bamboo. You have gravitational potential energy, which is gravity. So Bruce used both of these two to describe his movements. Thereby he's using this to get his movement, so his movement could be absolutely instant without having to do a major physical contraction, which takes time. So Bruce's start speed was instant. Anything slower than instant wasn't fast enough. So that would be something like not thinking about the movement, not having that conscious thought, how to throw it, how to throw a punch, etc., etc. It's like it's seen in Into the Dragon. He says, puts his fist up. He's in front of the monk, right, talking to the monk. He puts his fist up and he goes, "I don't hit." He's talking about his fist. It hits all by itself. It's just a natural, without thought, action. An automatic response, thinking without thinking. That's basically what it is. Doug Palmer. Joseph Kells. Something about a Japanese guy that challenged Bruce to fight him. Joseph Kells didn't know who he was. He claimed to be a 5th-degree black belt. He didn't know who he was. He'd never met him before. He hadn't even met Bruce before. But anyway, they went down and they congratulated Bruce on his demonstration with his group. About a week later, he called him up. This is 1960, and asked him if he could train with him. So they meet. Doing an arm banging exercise like you see on Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, when he is training his black student. The first student he tried it with quit before he did, and it kind of surprised him. Bruce said, "How long could you go with him?" So they started banging forearms with him. They started going pretty hard, and all of a sudden his fist flew up and struck him on the right temple. It was pretty hard, so he stopped. Joseph Kells stopped. He said, "You put your hand up there to protect." So he tells Bruce Lee, okay, and they started again. Finally it dawned on him, he better stop because he was a teacher and he better not keep this up. So he said it was enough. Bruce looked at him with a kind of cold stare. He said, "Don't try to be a hero. If it hurts, stop or I'll break your arm." Laughs. Bruce Lee laughed. It's a joke, so right. Bruce Lee goes up against a karate man. He tried to throw a kick at Bruce. Bruce blocked it, and he started dealing to him. Karate man started to fall to the floor, and as he was falling, Bruce kicked him in the face and knocked him flat. Bruce grabbed him and tried to turn him over to continue, but Jessica told him to stop because Bruce would really hurt the karate man really bad. So Bruce stopped. So Bruce told them he walked up to this other man who was with the karate man, and he thought he was the one who tried to get it started in the first place. So he said to this guy, "Do you want to fight me?" And this guy said he didn't. Bruce said, "You see the blood on the floor?" And the man said, "Yeah." Bruce said, "Clean it up." The karate man was still laying there on the floor, but he was awake, and asked how long the match took. Bruce told him 23 seconds, but Ed Hart didn't tell the man it was 11 seconds, so he wouldn't feel bad. It was very thoughtful, wasn't he? Ed Hart said it took 11 seconds because he kept the time on the watch. It ended that quickly. Yeah, don't want to embarrass the guy, right? That's how nice Bruce Lee was, apparently. No need to embarrass somebody like that. Go back on the page. Okay, it's about a guy that parked in front of Takamura's vegetable store, and he was told to move, and he got a bit mouthy or something like that. But Bruce dealt with him and sent him on his way. George Lee. Bob Baker. Why Bruce Lee chose him for Fist of Fury because he looked very Russian. And James Wu taking Ed Parker to Kempo Karate expert students. Stole them all. Okay, and there's quite a few data on his exercising techniques and the differences that he made, which gave him that better development, etc. We will continue this in a part 2, probably a part 3. We'll leave it there for the moment. We can leave the link to this particular book underneath this video so that you can read it in your own time, at your own pace. Some very interesting stuff there. Very, very interesting. Bruce's philosophy, the way he thought, the way he trained, and how he got that wicked ass physique and so forth. From the people that knew him best, those who were personal students, friends, and etc. So if you like this video, subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments below this video, and then go share this great book which has very deep insight into the life, the training, philosophy, etc. of the legendary martial artist Bruce Lee.